Hello and welcome to another episode of Conservation Conversations with BirdLife South Africa. I'm your host, Andrew de Blok, coming to you live from our head offices at Isdell House in Johannesburg. Tonight, we continue our popular series on birding in the various national parks destinations. Rick Nuttall, a well-known and popular birding and nature guide, will be taking us to Golden Gate Highlands National Park. But before we introduce tonight's presenter, please remember that you, our audience, can communicate with us using the Zoom chat room, and questions for our speakers can be posted into the Q&A box throughout the webinar. If you are watching us on Facebook Live tonight, you can also use the comment feed for your comments and your questions. We will get to these at the end of the webinar. Now, if you'd like to get in touch with us via our social media channels, please use the hashtag #ConservationConversations. All of our previous episodes are also available on the BirdLife South Africa YouTube channel, as well as our podcast. We would like you to subscribe to our YouTube channel to help us grow support for our video content. Last week, we managed to hit the all-important 1,000 subscribers threshold, so thank you very much to all of you who subscribed and helped us to reach that very important milestone. If you are enjoying the webinar series and can afford to support it financially, every little bit helps to keep this webinar free for all to learn and enjoy. You can simply scan the Quicket QR code on screen now, or you can visit our Conservation Conversations website to find the link to the donations tab. A huge thank you to everyone who has donated thus far. We really do appreciate it. The big news from this past week was the successful hosting of the Virtual African Bird Fair 2021. Over 1,800 people from across Africa and the world joined in for what is truly the biggest event in African birding. If you missed out, the content is still available on our platform for 12 more days, so head on over to eventmobi.com/birdfair to watch all of our wonderful presentations. If you enjoy these weekly webinars, then the Bird Fair was a comparative feast of entertaining and informative presentations. Fewer than 80 tickets are left for our Jackpot birding raffle, so make sure not to miss out on this opportunity to support conservation while standing a relatively good chance of winning 100,000 Rand. Head to www.birdlife.org.za/jackpotbirding. Our 13th to 16th of August birding weekend at Eco Training's Makuleke camp still has a handful of spots available. For your chance to enjoy phenomenal birding at never to be seen again prices, you can email Wesley, he's the Eco Training Projects Manager, at projects@ecotraining.co.za. Now, our Conservation League donor competition is ending at the end of August. You can show your commitment to conservation by signing up and also stand a chance of winning a 4-night stay for 2 at Simanga Private Game Reserve in Northern KwaZulu-Natal. And this prize is valued at 40,000 Rand. For more, you can email membership@birdlife.org.za and chat to Shireen Gould. It now gives me great pleasure to introduce my friend Rick Nuttall to our Conservation Conversations webinar series. For those of you who tuned into our Virtual African Bird Fair session on the hidden gem birding destinations, you will recognize Rick as the presenter on Susticulars Nature Reserve outside of Rump. Rick is a well-known personality in the birding community and is well recognized as an authority, particularly on birding in the Free State, his personal stomping ground. Rick has been sharing his knowledge and passion for birds with like-minded people from a very young age. His MSc degree involved behavioral studies of waxbills and their close relatives. And Rick joined the National Museum, Bloemfontein, as an ornithologist in 1991, undertaking research for 10 years before his appointment as director, a position held until November 2017. Rick has authored scientific, semi-scientific, and popular ornithological publications. Rick, we welcome you to tonight's platform. I am very excited about this. This is a national park that I am very well acquainted with and that I love dearly. And I cannot wait to get back and join you for some birding. So Rick, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you very much, Andrew. Just to check that you can see everything, you can hear me.
Yes, everything looks perfect, Rick. Thank you.
Perfect. Great. Thank you very much. Well, thank you so much, Andrew, for that introduction. And I must say, thanks so much for the invitation to join this wonderful series conservation conversations. I've not managed to tune into all of them, but I think I've watched many of them, not only live but also following up on the YouTube videos. So what a fantastic series and a lovely initiative, and congratulations to all involved at BirdLife South Africa on getting this wonderful series going and keeping it going. Very, very good evening to all our viewers this evening, and welcome to birding Golden Gate Highlands National Park. As Andrew mentioned, and I've just been listening and seen in the chat room, many of you have visited this area, and yes, it's spectacular. I am very fortunate to visit Golden Gate at least once a year, but usually many more times than once. But that one time is for the SANParks Honorary Rangers annual birding weekend in February of every year. And I'll be returning to talk just a little bit about this towards the end of my presentation. So let's kick off. Okay, I think many people will recognize many of the features. Folks who have been to Golden Gate, they will recognize the features that I show. This is a different angle of the well-known sentinel, or the buttress that you can see from a number of places within the park, but particularly from the Golden Gate Hotel. This is a wintry view with very little greenery around, apart from the alien willow trees growing down along the river close to the Glenreenan camp. What I'd like to do is just share some of the fantastic scenery before we get going on the main topic of this evening's presentation. And this is mainly for those who perhaps don't know Golden Gate National Park, Highlands National Park. For those who both from South Africa and further afield, who may never have visited, and to entice you to whet your appetites, and hopefully through this presentation and by the end of it, you will decide this is definitely a place to visit, definitely one for the bucket list. It's a fantastic area, situated right on the border of South Africa and Lesotho, the mountain kingdom of Lesotho. It's in the Free State province, and it includes a part of what we know as the Maluti mountain range, and it's very, very close to the well-known Drakensberg mountain range. Andrew was mentioning the paleontological significance of this area. In fact, they are busy completing a paleontological center which highlights the geology and important paleontology of the area, and this is in just close to the Glenreenan rest camp. So that would be something I'm looking forward to it opening, so that we can go and see what they have on offer. But yes, a very, very important area, and these beautiful cliffs that are shown in these in a number of these images represent both the moister, drier, wetter periods and drier periods that this area was exposed to many, many, many millions of years ago. The lower lying yellowish sandstone represents times of almost desertification, with wind-blown sediments, essentially sand dunes, wind-blown sand dunes, and those kind of sediments, that kind of sand. And then the upper, more reddish areas of the cliffs shown in some of these pictures represent moisture times, when this area was part of a huge inland lake system, and that was the time when the dinosaurs were around. One of the very significant finds in Golden Gate Highlands National Park, in fact very close to the main rest camp, was a nest of dinosaur eggs, and when these were prepared by fossil preparators, they actually found embryos inside these eggs. So, and I think this is possibly the first, but a very rare find of dinosaur embryos in situ in eggs. I digress. But yeah, the bottom right corner shows the Glenreenan rest camp, and in the middle at the bottom are just some of the rondavels, the huts with thatched roofs, looking up onto these beautiful cliffs. Bottom left is a distant view of the hotel, the Golden Gate Hotel. And yes, so there's accommodation for everybody. There's a campsite as well, and a beautiful, beautiful area to spend time in. One unfortunate thing is that there's a national road, a tarred national road that traverses the national park. So, but despite that, a lot of the time it is a place of incredible peace and tranquility. And apart from the birds and the scenery, that's what I love about this place, just being able to kick back and enjoy the absolute peace and tranquility of this place and let the mountain splendor speak to you for that. Just a few other shots of some of the scenery, showing these beautiful close rocky hillsides with bush, and then again the distant cliffs. In the top right hand corner, I've just put in a picture of one of the tree species that is incredibly common, but such a special feature of Golden Gate. And this is the what in Afrikaans they refer to the ohout, the old wood. Its bark and branches are, have very flaky bark, and its scientific name is Leucocidia, and it's very much a part of this landscape. The picture in the bottom, you can see the Drakensberg range in the distance, and yeah, so people who know that part of the Drakensberg range will be able to identify some of those landmark features that you can see there. Okay, I'm going to look at the at the bird life and discuss birding in this wonderful national park by looking at essentially the different habitats where one can expect to find birds. And first, I'm going to be talking about the higher mountain areas where along the sandstone cliffs, but also higher and going up onto on the tops of the mountains. Many of these areas are capped by extruded volcanic basalts from a time when the whole of the subcontinent of southern Africa, which was part of a much bigger mega continent at the time, was covered by this volcanic magma that came up through fissures in the crust of the earth, and it covered vast tracts of land. And these caps of dark basalt above the sandstone cliffs is what remains, and this is the high mountains of the Drakensberg escarpment as well. But in these areas, we can find a number of the very special bird species that people have already referred to. And the first of these, a glorious bird to see, is, of course, the bearded vulture. And this is a lovely adult bird, and when seen in flight with their beautiful diamond-shaped tail and the lovely broad, long wings with the pinion tips, but also that pale body and neck and head. Such a spectacular bird to see, and such a signature species of these mountain areas. It's wonderful to connect with these birds up there. There are a number of breeding pairs in the area, and of course, for these birds to hop over from the mountain kingdom of Lesotho is just a quick early morning flight or mid morning flight when the earth has heated enough, and they're good warm updrafts for these birds to be able to soar. Adult birds, but it's and we do see them perched sometimes, particularly up at the area around the vulture hide, which I'll talk about very, very briefly. But there you can see the lovely beard, the dark feathers on the face from around the eye, extending forwards and downwards, and forming a little beard, a little tufted beard below the bill of this magnificent species. Something that is very special, and I've been fortunate enough to see it on a number of occasions, particularly up in Lesotho, is when these birds actually collect bones and fly up and then drop them onto fairly flattish rocks, large rocks below, called ossuaries. And these rocky areas are used generation after generation by bearded vultures to break open these long bones, to crack them and break them open. And the birds then fly down and land, not only to extract the marrow from these long bones, but then they also ingest fairly large pieces of bone. So remarkable birds. They have almost like a spoon-shaped tongue that is used to extract pieces of long bone, and yeah, they can consume remarkably large pieces of bone and digest those. So a fascinating bird indeed. Now, birds do breed in the wider area, and so there are also chances of seeing younger birds. The bird on the top left is a particularly young bird. They go from this dark chocolatey brown through all the various stages of juvenile and sub-adult plumage, as shown by a bird in the bottom right, through to the adult plumage shown in the previous couple of slides. So this is a real special to expect at Golden Gate. If you do see them, you're very fortunate. I've been there many times and frequently have not seen these birds. But if you're there for a few days, there's a good chance, and the weather's not inclement with rain and cloud, but there's a bit of sunshine and a bit of heat. The chances are fairly good of seeing bearded vultures. And then the other vulture species that also occurs in the area is of course the Cape vulture, another one of our endangered species. And of course, being up in the mountains, there are a number of breeding colonies, and these birds roost up in these high mountains as well. Breeding colonies, not in Golden Gate itself, but in neighboring Lesotho. And so, as I mentioned, for the bearded vulture, you know, these birds can travel huge distances and cover great distances in a relatively short period of time. So, you know, if there's food available for them, and they range far and wide. But again, this is a species one should be on the lookout for, very much so in Golden Gate Highlands National Park. This is the area where the vulture restaurant is, with a viewing hide shown here in the bottom left. These photographs were taken the day that the hide was actually officially opened. And so you approach, for those who don't know, you approach walking in behind these embankments and into a beautifully situated hide. And that half of the interior is dedicated for photographers, and the other half just for people coming in to view the area. And in front of, on the top right photograph, this is the area where carcasses are put out, and so this is where you would tend to see the vultures and the white-necked ravens and various other species coming down. Also jackal coming in. They tend to remove quite a lot of the the carcasses, bits and pieces that are put out. Many people who visit this vulture restaurant come back disappointed, because they don't necessarily see these birds, but you just need to persevere. But be on the lookout as you drive up and on the Orobi Loop, which is the route that you take to get to the vulture restaurant. Be on the lookout. Keep an eye out for vultures and other birds of prey, and in fact anywhere where you're particularly in the higher areas of the national park. Other large raptors that one can expect to see are Verreaux's eagles. There are a number of breeding pairs in the greater area, and yeah, I usually see these on my visits to Golden Gate. Always spectacular to see these birds with their lovely, lovely broad wings. Such majestic birds in flight. Some people mentioned the Jackal Buzzard. You know, I think we take this bird for granted. It's a spectacular bird of prey, and a near endemic to this part of the world. So, you know, next time you see a Jackal Buzzard, just, you know, doff your cap and just really take it in. They are spectacular birds, particularly the adults, with their wonderful, you know, patterns, color patterns, contrasting color patterns, and of course, if I mean, if you hear them calling up in the berg, in the mountain areas, and it echoes across the mountains and across the valleys, it's just one of those very, very special calls to hear. And then some of the smaller, faster flying raptors. Lanner peregrine is also present, but this is the Lanner with the pale hind cap, and always lovely to see these dashing raptors. I was doing some surveys up on some mountain on a mountain range down in the Eastern Cape recently, and one of these birds came bulleting past me, and it sounded, you know, almost supersonic as it stooped past me. Quite a spectacle. So this is also something that one can experience up in the higher areas of Highlands National Park. And then a much smaller raptor, resident bird, they breed in the area as well as the rock kestrel. We often see them hovering over the grassy slopes and the sort of upper grasslands in the high altitude areas. And always nice to catch up with the little rock kestrels. And then a very special bird to see is the black harrier. These birds, in Harrier in fact, but particularly the endemic black harrier, to see them quartering the grasslands. I was at the Vulture restaurant area one time, and one of these came up from the valley below and just drifted up on an updraft over the edge of the top of the cliffs onto the flat grassland above, and just, you know, cruised off over the grassland, quartering, looking for prey, and with those piercing yellow eyes. Spectacular birds of prey. And then another very special bird for me of these mountain areas is the white-necked raven, and I think particularly so special bird for me because of their calls. You know, I mentioned the Jackal Buzzard with that sound that you can hear echoing across the valleys. The sound of calling white-necked ravens is also something that is very, very special and very evocative of these mountain areas. So another interesting species, and of course, you know, these birds, if they're present in numbers, they can pose quite a threat to the larger birds of prey, such as Varro's eagles, and you know, they can harass them quite significantly. But I've never seen large numbers of these birds in Golden Gate Highlands National Park, but they are there. They are very much birds of the mountains. So always nice to see them and to hear them. Okay, so we're moving down onto the sort of lower mountain slopes, particularly as shown in this area, in this slide, those areas that are quite well vegetated, and particularly those areas vegetated with proteas. And there's some pretty special species that occur where you find proteas in Golden Gate. And this is perhaps the most special species. This is the Gurney sugarbird. Cape and Gurney sugarbirds being very, very special parts of our avifauna here in southern, south and southern Africa, being found nowhere else in the world. And I say southern Africa because there's an isolated population of Gurney sugarbird up in the Chimanimani Mountains in Zimbabwe, in the east of Zimbabwe, where it borders on Mozambique. But apart from that, this family, the sugarbirds, Promeropidae, are restricted to South Africa, Lesotho and Swaziland. And there are fairly good numbers of these birds when the proteas and the aloes are in flower in Golden Gate Highlands National Park. There's specific areas that one needs to go to have a good chance of finding them. One of them is Protea Corner. It can be quite dangerous as you're going down the little pass down to the lower lying area to the west of Glenreenan Rest Camp, down towards what used to be Kwakwa National Park and the Basotho Cultural Village area. Even around the Basotho Cultural Village, which is now obviously incorporated into Golden Gate Highlands National Park, where there are flowering proteas and flowering aloes, you've got a good chance of finding Gurney sugarbirds. And these are very, very special birds to see. And then, of course, other nectar-feeding species, such as the sunbirds, the malachite sunbird. Some beautiful pictures of these, which I'll acknowledge the photographers who very kindly allowed me to use their photographs at the end. Some of them do have their names on the pictures. These are Trevor Hardiker's photographs, a lovely displaying male malachite sunbird, and watching the antics of displaying malachite sunbirds is great fun. These little yellow pectoral tufts, which you don't see otherwise, and this photograph shows it wonderfully. So these birds are numerous when the aloes and the Niphophis, the red hot pokers, and the proteas are in flower, and they add such lovely splashes of color, this beautiful metallic green. There are a number of other sunbird species, but I just put these two in because it's quite nice to see both greater double-collared on the left and southern double-collared on the right, sunbirds in Golden Gate Highlands National Park. So it's great to see them together. And I mentioned earlier that we should, keep looking upwards for raptors, and particularly the vultures. There are also other aerial feeding birds that Golden Gate is a particularly good place for, and these are the swallows and swifts. But I'm going to talk briefly about various swift species. We get a number of them. This is the Alpine Swift, and it's quite an easy one because it's the largest of the swifts, but it's the only swift in our region with a white belly. And you frequently see wheeling flocks of swifts calling, particularly over the Glenreenan area and the hotel area. And it's always nice to see that. And then breeding colonies of African black swift. There are a number of these in the rock crevices up in the cliffs in Golden Gate, and these are very, very common. And this can be told apart from the common swift that is the migrant from Europe, in that the African black swift, and you can see from this picture, it has these paler colored inner secondary feathers closer to the body. On this side as well. In the common swift, this is a uniform black on the upper surface of the bird's body. So very nice to be able to compare the different species of swifts, and I'm going to move on to the others, that the smaller ones, and these are the swifts with the white rump. We get all three species occurring in Golden Gate: the little, the Horus, and the white rumped swift. The most special of the three is the Horus Swift, and these two pictures show the Horus Swift. And the features to look for are the slight fork in the tail, and then it also has a broad white rump, and the white comes over the sides of the body, over the rump, which you can just see from the underneath on this bird, and you can see very clearly on the lateral view on this bird. So it doesn't have a long tail like the white, longish tail like the white rumped swift. It has it's in between the little swift and the white rumped swift. So that's the Horus, and they breed in Golden Gate as well. So it's nice, and they are hole nesters. So they'll breed in often in a road cutting, just the section of soil that is above the rocks, below the ground, the vegetation, the grass. very often they will breed in holes in that little section of soil. So that's the Horus Swift. Here is on the top left is the little swift. It has a blunt tail without a V and a very broad white rump. And then the white rump has a very narrow white rump that also goes over the edges of the body, but it has this longer, deeply forked tail. So it's very nice to be able to see, regular sightings of these different species and to compare the size difference between Alpine African black and common swift when they're there in summer, and then with these three white rumped species. Very, very nice for comparison. And then, as I mentioned earlier, too, swallows. There are a number of swallow species. The most common summer breeding migrant is the greater striped swallow. And then, of course, we also get the barn swallow, but I'll come on to that a little bit later. How this is distinguished from the lesser striped swallow. Both lesser and greater have got these rufous cap and rump, but the greater stripes is paler. It also has a pale patch on the cheek, whereas the lesser striped has that the same as the cap color. And then, of course, these are striped swallows, and this is the larger of the two striped swallows, the greater striped swallow, as opposed to the smaller one, which is the lesser striped swallow. And the greater striped swallow has the narrower stripes, whereas the lesser striped has the broader stripes. Okay, we're going to move now on to these rocky slopes, very often with bush, but it's the main. These are now the next group of birds are those associated with the rocky slope areas, and this is where we find the rock thrushes, like Cape rock thrush, a beautiful male here. This is the commoner of the two species. We also get the sentinel rock thrush. Look at the difference between the Cape and the sentinel. It's the extent of the this beautiful bluish grey color. In the Cape rock thrush, it's only the head, whereas the sentinel rock thrush, it extends both onto the back and onto the upper chest. And this is a female sentinel rock thrush. Lovely song that these species, particularly the Cape rock thrush, has. And I must say, when I hear Cape rock thrush singing, it takes me straight back to my childhood spent in the Underberg area of the Drakensberg, where we used to spend family holidays, and there were a few resident pairs of Cape rock thrushes, and we by the song of the Cape rock thrush in the morning. So again, these are very much species in this area of the higher mountain slopes, rocky slopes. Another wonderful endemic species is the buff-streaked chat. This is the male. They've got wonderful character. If you watch these birds and you see them interacting, they've got lovely calls as well. Again, so much an evocative sound and part of these mountain areas. Familiar chat, not restricted to the mountain areas. You get them particularly in the rest camps as well. Always such friendly, confiding little birds. And of course, when they flick their wings, that's what essentially tells them apart from similar looking chats like the sickle-winged. But the Afrikaans folk have a wonderful description of this saying that hy skud sy baadjie. He's shaking his waistcoat or his jacket. A very apt description. Lovely little birds. And then a number of people mention the ground woodpecker as being a special bird for them. Indeed, it is. And these were birds photographed, unfortunately, on the Kikuyu grass in the Glenreenan rest camp. But I put them in because there was some interesting posturing going on. And, this is another very special bird. It's an endemic to our area, found nowhere else in the world. And, they feed on ants primarily. They have these long tongues, as most woodpecker species do, and they nest in earth banks as well, in holes. So fascinating birds, and you always see them in groups, and they have quite raucous calls, but these calls and echoing across the small valleys are also very much a feature of the landscape in Golden Gate. Another special bird up in these mountain areas is the African rock pipet. Here's a bird perched on a rock, as rock pipets do, and they have the most beautiful descending call, very often with with a trill attached to it as well. So wonderful to see these birds and to hear them. And this particular individual is showing quite a yellowish tinge to the wing feathers, and up on the shoulder as well. If you can get close to these birds, you can see that yellowish tinge quite clearly. A bird of the mountain slopes, often where there are rocks, but mainly where there's rank grass on these hillsides, is the wailing Susticular. There are a number of different Susticular species in Golden Gate, but quite easy to tell them apart and to distinguish based on habitat. Habitat is an important indicator of different species, and then of course if you are familiar with the calls and the displays of these species, that helps. But Golden Gate is another one of those areas where, because of the diversity of habitats, it's actually very provides a wonderful opportunity to, if you're spending a few days there, to actually get to grips with some of these high altitude Susticulars. And I'll mention a few of those as we get into the grasslands as well. The wailing Susticular is particularly found on these grassy slopes of the more mountainous areas. Interesting that somebody mentioned that they'd had a sighting of Cape Eagle Owl. Here on the left is a Cape Eagle Owl with its orange eyes and its more blotched plumage, as opposed to a spotty. The spotted eagle owl on the right with its yellower eyes and its barring. So both species do occur. The spotted eagle owl is more frequently encountered, particularly in the evenings and at night, but you do hear Cape eagle owls in particular. We hear them more than we see them, but they are definitely present. So always good to be able to connect with them. I've heard them far more than I've seen them, but lovely to hear their calls. Okay, moving into the grassland areas now, and there's a lot of grassland, particularly up on the sort of plateaus of the mountain and the mountain, not so much the mountain tops, but the plateaus. And Andrew was mentioning the southern Bulldivers, and if you're looking for the species, Golden Gate is a very good place to go and look for it. Remarkable birds. Rather silent compared to the other ibises, particularly the hardy-dog ibis. Sacred ibis is also doesn't make that much noise, and they have rather a weak little call compared to the hardy-dog, vuvuzela bird. But always good to see southern bald ibis, and this is their stronghold. These sandstone areas along the escarpment, along the Drakensberg escarpment, and going further up all the way up into Mpumalanga, where they breed and roost in overhangs and caves in these sandstone cliffs. And there are a number of breeding colonies, fairly significant breeding colonies in the greater Golden Gate area. Another species that occurs from time to time in the grasslands is our national bird, the blue crane. And I'll never tire of seeing this magnificent crane species. Of course, all of our three crane species are of conservation concern. They're endangered. So very fortunate to catch up with these birds. This photograph by Rich Flack is a lovely picture showing what we might think of as long tail feathers that the blue crane has. In fact, those long elongated feathers are the tertials, and these are the inner wing feathers, the wing feathers closest to the body. They have a very short tail, in fact, and you see this best when the birds fly or when they're displaying and flapping their wings. It's the long trailing ends to the inner wing feathers that look like a tail when the bird is standing and walking. Beautiful bird. Some interesting francolins occur. This is grey wing. There are a number of coveys that one can see, particularly on the Oribi loop, going up to the Vulture restaurant, and then the other special francolin that we see is the red wing francolin. So there's both grey wing and red wing. Always have a close look at the throat. Look for the black and white speckling of the grey wing on the left, and just the fawn coloured or buff colouring to the throat with black and white speckling, but not the throat itself. So always good. And of course, try and distinguish between the calls of these two species. But they both occur there. And then you'd be very fortunate to see Stanley's busted, Stanley's Denham's busted. The distinguishing feature of this particular species, of course, it's the only species that occurs in these upland grasslands, these more moist grasslands. As we go further west, we get the Ludwig's busted, but this species has black and white stripes on the top of the head, and if you get close enough to see that, that's a giveaway, apart from which species we might expect to find in the habitat. So lovely to see these big birds, and of course these are some of the largest flying birds that there are in the world, with the Cordy busted. And then Koran species, one of my favorites is the blue Koran. There are a number of pairs in Golden Gate, particularly down towards the cultural village and the Basotho cultural village. So look around, if you're looking for this species, look around the flat areas of grassland, open grassland, in the vicinity of the Basotho cultural village. Wonderful bird, another endemic species, and stunning bird to see. During summer, the common quail is probably more frequently heard than seen, calling in the grasslands. And the picture at the bottom there shows a bird, if you're lucky enough to see it on the side of the road or while you're out walking. We frequently see these birds as they flush from our feet or from the roadside. Lovely to hear their wet my lips call in the grasslands in summer. Another lovely little swallow that is found quartering the grasslands in summertime is the breeding migrant banded martin, and yeah, they have broad wings. They fly with slow wing beats. Sometimes it looks as if they're flying too slowly, but they keep airborne just above the grass, and they have these wonderful white eyebrows. Lovely to see them. Another species very common in these grasslands is the Cape Longclaw. Look at the color of the back. You know, if it's got its back to you and it's looking away, it's going to be difficult to see them sometimes. They camouflage very well, but as soon as they turn around, if they're facing away from you and look towards you, and you see this beautiful orange throat bordered by the black, that's a dead giveaway and a wonderful signal. These birds must use. You can see it over quite a distance, but a wonderful example of dorsal coloring on the back that is very important for camouflage from predators from above, and then the brighter colors are hidden below, but they can show them off to great effect if and when they need to. Right, somebody was asking about yellow-breasted pipit. Golden Gate is a good place for yellow-breasted pipit. This species is usually seen, when I have my annual visits during February, on both the Oroby Loop and on the Blesbok Loop, particularly when you're getting up to the higher lying grasslands. And listen out for its display flight and its for the call that it gives in display flight in summertime. Sort of a chi-chi-chi-chi-chi-chi-chi call. Again, look at the bird on the left with its back to us, and it's just looking over its shoulder, showing off that yellow, but if it wasn't, it'd be very well camouflaged compared to the bird on the right. The same bird just facing us, and you can see that beautiful yellow. And of course, it loses that in the non-breeding season. It becomes a much duller yellow. But on the right is a bird in display flight, a male, and yeah, they're particular behavior patterns that one should be looking out for, the way they fly. But if you're in the right habitat in those areas in summertime, from November through to February, listen out for the calling birds, look out for them in flight display, and just with some patience, you should be provided with fairly good views of this wonderful endemic. A very special bird of this area. Okay, then we get on to the Susticulars. The fan-tailed or zitting Susticular is one of the common ones, particularly in the lower lying grasslands. And but a very special species is the pale crown Susticular. And again, it helps to know the calls and displays of these species, because that'll point you in the right direction, and then try and pick them up when they're displaying. Many of these smaller ones, particularly pale crown, but also wing snapping and the cloud. And in summertime, on a sunny day, the air is just full of the sounds and sights of displaying Susticulars over these grasslands. It's a fantastic place to be. And again, like with the swifts, it's a wonderful opportunity to get to grips with these this whole batch of lookalike Susticulars. Spending time out in the field with these birds in summer is really the only way to get to grips with them. And of course, the pale crown in breeding plumage has the pale crown. It gets its name from. It hasn't got any markings on its crown, whereas the other species generally do have streaked crowns. But one needs to know the songs and displays of these species. But they're all there. They're there for the taking. So to spend time out in these grasslands can be frustrating, but you can also learn a lot. Okay, and then widow birds are well represented at Golden Gate. The long-tailed widow bird, of course, in summertime, again, another one of the species that I think we take for granted because they're fairly common. They're very common, in fact. But for overseas visitors, birders coming to our country and seeing these birds, it's really very, very special for them. And of course, when they are performing their territorial display flights with these broad wings and the tail pushed forward and the slow, methodical wing beats, you wonder how they actually keep aloft. But it's a fascinating thing to watch. And the other species that occur are the fan-tailed widow bird, and then of course the red-collared widow bird. So they're all there. Okay, now moving from grasslands to the more wooded areas that you find in the ravines and the gullies and the valleys at Golden Gate. There's some very nice areas just across from Glenreenan Camp, Rest Camp. Echo Ravine is a very nice one, and it's an easy walk from camp. and you get up into those areas and you can see some pretty special birds. But the African Harrier hawk is a bird that you often see flying along the cliff faces and perching in emergent, the emergent trees from time to time. They're around there. They're fairly common in Golden Gate. Always nice to see them. And this is another fairly special bird for the area. You get it moving into parts of the Eastern Free State at certain times of the year when certain trees are in fruit. I know when the wild olives are in fruit, some distance from the Eastern Free State, these birds tend to move even into areas bordering on the center of the Free State. African olive pigeon, what used to be called the Ramarin pigeon, but we see them fairly frequently in Golden Gate. But they're not resident. They move in when particular tree species are fruiting, and they come in and make use of the bounty of fruit. Always nice to see them. Stunning pigeons. And another species that you don't see often, but they are there, and I've in fact found these birds breeding in the campsite at Glenreenan, is the Olive Woodpecker. Very, very special bird. This is one of the few places in the Free State, if you're keeping a provincial list, this is where you need to go, or further up to up the escarpment towards Meermal, and you find the Olive Woodpeckers. And they are typically found in these forested areas in the gullies. During summertime, you get a number of cuckoo species, particularly red-chested. You hear them more than you see them, as is often the case. And the Diedrich is always around in summer, harassing the local weavers. But these two species add tremendously to to the sights and sounds of the area during summertime. And then another very special bird species, the endemic bush blackcap. This is a bird that we generally get up in Echo Ravine, which is just across from Glenreenan Camp. And they're quite easy to see and to see well, because you can get quite close to them in that area. A rare bird for us in the Free State, and this is where we need to go to see it. Another bird I think we tend to take for granted is the Bok Makiri, because it's fairly common where it occurs. This is a stunning bush shrike. And again, people coming to our area, South Africa, from overseas, really enjoy seeing this spectacularly marked bird species. And not only does it have a spectacular plumage and patterns, but it of course has a voice to go with that as well, particularly when they duet, and a huge diversity and range of different calls. Always nice to see them. Where can you see a bird with a black and yellow tail? Stunning Bok Makiris. And again, their sounds are just so much a part of the area. A number of flycatchers occur. I've just put a couple of them in. The African paradise flycatcher is a summer migrant, breeding summer migrant. And of course, the Cape Battis is, it's the only Battis we get there. It's the sort of the forest Battis, but you get it in these wooded gullies, and you can get really nice and close to these, because many of these gullies are steep-sided, and you look down into the trees and shrubbery, and these little birds are, often allow a close approach. And then one of the, together with the bush blackcap, I think one of the most special species of these areas, and you can see this little bird in the Ohote, in the Leucocidia, is the Barrett's warbler. Now, for many, this is a very, very difficult bird to see, skulking in the undergrowth, and you hear it, but all you see is movement in the undergrowth, and maybe a little glimpse of a little dark-bodied warbler. Again, at Golden Gate, you can get very, very good views of these birds, sometimes out in the open, and they're very vocal. So you hear them, and if you have patience, if you're patient enough, you should get very, very good sightings of the Barrett's warbler. You can see the particular picture on the top left, showing quite a bit of faint streaking on the chest. One of the most beautiful sounds of the area. Quite interesting, in Golden Gate we have a number of species pairs, sort of what we call east-west species pairs, and red-eyed and black-eyed bulbuls are a case in point. Both species occur in Golden Gate Highlands National Park, so be on the lookout for them both, as well as hybrids. There are definitely hybrids, birds that have a dull orange, sort of dark orange eye ring, will be hybrids between red-eyed and black-eyed bulbuls. But this is where the distribution ranges of the two species come together, and but you can see both species in the confines of the park. And then another very interesting one is the Karoo thrush and olive thrush. I've just put a few pointers to show the differences between the two. The one on the right is the olive thrush, and the one on the left is the Karoo thrush. Now, the things to look out for not the best feature by all means, but the underparts of the olive thrush are orange, quite rich orange, whereas the underparts of the Karoo thrush are more brownish. They don't have this rich orange coloring. An important thing to look for is the eye ring, the presence or absence of a yellow eye ring, pale yellow eye ring, which you find in the Karoo thrush, but not in the olive thrush. Perhaps one of the best features is the culmen, so the upper ridge of the bill. In the Karoo thrush has this completely yellow bill with no dark on it, whereas the olive thrush has a yellow lower mandible, and the tip of the upper mandible is yellow, but it has a dark patch on the culmen closest to the nostrils and closest to the base of the bill. So that's a very important thing. So the bill color, the eye ring, and then also look at the vent. The olive thrush has a white vent, whereas the Karoo thrush has a grayish brown vent. And the throat, very often the olive thrush has got a streaked throat, whereas the Karoo thrush doesn't have that markedly streaked throat. So those are the main features to look for. And here's just another example. That's a Karoo thrush, overall brown, but with a bright yellow bill. And this one, you can't really see the yellow eye ring. But here's an olive thrush. Look at the more orange underparts and that dark patch on the bill around the nostrils, and a more streaked throat. So that's another species pair, and both of these occur in the rest camp in the camp at Glenrena. Another two that I didn't put pictures in is Karoo Prinia and Drakensberg Prinia. They both occur. Karoo is the more common, but you do get Drakensberg Prinias coming into the area, in the area as well, particularly more to the east. Cape grassbird is another special endemic that we get, and they're frequently up and fairly conspicuous when they're calling. Just look out, look in the direction of where you hear that wonderful bubbling repetitive song phrase, and very often they'll be sitting on the top of a bush out in the open when they sing. Cape grassbird. I've already mentioned the widow birds. We also get the bishops, and this is the yellow bishop. And this bird occurs in these mountain areas, particularly in the valleys, and always nice to see them, particularly in summer when the males are in their breeding plumage. Weavers, Cape weaver is probably the commonest weaver species. This lovely pale eye and that orange face, the color of that, depending on the time of the year, even the condition of the males, breeding condition. That'll either be bright orange, and the extent of that varies as well, or it'll be a much paler color, but always that long sharp bill and a yellow pale eye is what tells the male Cape Weaver apart from other similars. But you won't get any other plain yellow weaver in Golden Gate anyway. And then the other common one is the southern masked weaver. Some of my favorite birds are the little swee waxbills, and it's always nice to come across these. Usually you see them in small family groups, foraging quietly on little grass seeds under the bushes. You see them in Glenreenan Rest Camp as well. Male on the right with a black face, and the female on the left. Cape canaries are very common, the commonest of the canaries. And wonderful to see these beautiful little birds in small flocks, and they have the most beautiful song as well. So summertime, when they're singing, it's fantastic to experience that as well. A whole little flock of Cape canaries sitting in the top of a tree singing, it's something very special. We get 3 species of buntings in Golden Gate. By far the most common is the Cape bunting, which you find in most areas. The cinnamon-breasted bunting is the one on the right here. That is found more in the rocky areas. And then golden-breasted bunting is found in the areas where there's, fairly open trees, sometimes along the streams. If there are exotic trees, there are some areas, I know they've been trying to get rid of the exotics growing in Golden Gate, but there's some areas where there's still exotics, and that's where you tend to find them. So quite nice to see all 3 species. Set yourself a target and try and find all 3 if you're going to Golden Gate. Okay, moving now onto the wetland areas, particularly the reed beds and fringing vegetation around these reed beds. There's some extensive reed beds. This is on the Clacks Vlei section on the way to the Basotho Cultural Village if we're heading from west to east. And number of interesting species that can be found in this area. This is not really accessible to generally to the general public, but if you're there on a birding weekend, these areas can be accessed as part of the program on the weekend. And the kind of birds that we can expect to see there are beautiful grey-crowned cranes. These aren't plentiful. There are a few pairs that are seen from time to time in these wetland areas. And as I mentioned with the blue crane, it's always wonderful to see any of our crane species, and these are spectacular birds to see. A purple heron is another special heron, a member of the heron and egret family, and they're quite common in these reed beds, in these wetlands. African marsh harrier is another species of raptor that we encounter, and they're usually around wetland areas and or in the fringing grassland close to wetlands. And as is typical of harriers, they have the slow quartering flight as they search for prey, flying fairly low over the vegetation. This is another species that we tend to hear more than we see, the African rail. They are present in fairly good numbers in these reed bed areas, wetland areas in the reserve, in the national park. Associated with wetland areas, swallow species, the white-throated swallow generally is associated with water. It's the bird on the top left, beautiful metallic blue on its upper parts and on its wings, with a clean white throat and a more sort of sooty, a light sooty rest of the underparts separated by the sort of broken breastband. Throat band with a little chestnut patch on the forehead. And during summertime, good numbers of barn swallows, move through and very often actually form nighttime roosts in these reed beds. There's lots of food for aerial insectivores in the area as well. The Levaillant Susticular is the Susticular of the wetland areas. The Afrikaans name of Vlei-Tintinkie, Vlei being Afrikaans word for a wetland and a marshy area, so it's very apt. Wherever you find rank grass growing in these drainage lines, will always be Levaillant Susticulars, and quite easy to identify on call. Very distinctive vocalizations that they have. And again, beautiful to spend time just watching these little birds interacting and moving around in their habitat. And of course, this is also the domain of the southern red bishop, and the incredible beehive hive of activity when red bishops are breeding in a reed bed is something to watch. And I urge you, if you have never done it, just spend a bit of time beside a reed bed with breeding red bishops in summertime, and it's great fun, and to just watch what's going on. Also wonderful opportunities for photographs. Okay, then on to the sort of river or stream systems. There are a couple of species that are quite special that occur in this area. One being the African black duck. There are a number of waterfowl species, but I think this is perhaps the most special of the ducks that occur in the area. Always nice to see them. These pretty much dark, very dark ducks with white speckling. And then a number of kingfisher species, including the giant kingfisher. Here we have a male and a female. You distinguish between the two. The male wears the shirt, the female wears the skirt. So the bird on the right is the male with the shirt, and the bird on the left is the female wearing the skirt on the with the chestnut lower down, and the male has it higher up on its chest. And then a very, very special little bird, little kingfisher, that you find on the smaller streams. And in fact, if you stay in Glenreenan Camp, there's a pair that breeds on the stream in the river, in the stream bank, just to the immediate west of the camp area. And you should be able to find the half-collared kingfisher along that stream and right next to the campsite as well. Always great to catch up with this little kingfisher. Beautiful bird. Okay, well, interestingly, there've been a few new additions to the park list in recent years, and one of these is the broad-tailed warbler. A couple of birds were seen up near Mountain Retreat, which is a series of log cabins that provide accommodation up on the hill to the left of the Vulture restaurant. So I haven't actually seen these birds there, but they are there. Broad-tailed warbler, and then the most recent one is the short-tailed pippet. So some pretty special birds. The number of I haven't mentioned. Striped flufftail occurs there as well, and so these are birds to be on the lookout for. They definitely require a lot of effort and a lot of hard work to find them, but they do occur in Golden Gate Highlands National Park. I just want to briefly talk about the annual birding event that I participate in. As a helper, I go along and take people on walks, and sometimes give presentations and join in, with the honorary rangers. It's the most wonderful weekend. It's been going for about 14 years now, and as you know, the SANParks Honorary Rangers run a number of these birding weekends in our national parks, the very popular ones in Kruger. But this is a very special birding weekend. Some people have been coming back every year because they just love it. And you know, I think that the folks have become good friends. We've almost become like family. But it's a wonderful opportunity to go out and spend time out in the park. As I mentioned, with the wetland areas, the access is given during this weekend to areas that aren't normally open to the public, and we have wonderful social times in the evenings, and it's just a great fun weekend. And there's some pretty special birds to find and to see, as I've shown. So it's something worth supporting. If you'd like to come to the Golden Gate and you'd like a bit of help trying to find certain bird species, this is definitely something to consider. It's normally in the early February each year, so look out for the adverts about this. Just some of the the ideas and how they contribute to the bigger picture. Every year we update the checklists for the national park based on the vetted lists that are submitted. I'm involved in that vetting process as well. Of course, there are other ways of doing it, and we've found species such as the broad-tailed warbler and the quite rare olive woodpeckers. It contributes to the atlasing project, and of course, atlasing. What is atlasing about? It's monitoring changes in distribution, the timing of migration, and we leave it to the fundis to analyze this information and look at it over time to see, are these responses to change, to environmental change. But a good example is the Southern African Bird Atlas project. So all of the information that is gathered during these weekends goes towards projects such as SABAP2, the Bird Atlas project. It's also used in updating a red data book status of species. I've already mentioned that we have a number of endangered species that occur in the park. And of course, all of these records go to the relevant authorities, through to BirdLife South Africa via BirdLasser. I'm sure many of you have heard of this wonderful app that we use to do atlasing. And also, it helps to determine bird conservation priorities for national parks such as Golden Gate, and so particularly with important species of conservation concern, such as the restricted range yellow-breasted Pippet, of course the southern Bulldivers. So not only is it a great fun time and an opportunity to get to grips with some quite special and sometimes quite difficult groups of birds, but the information that's gathered contributes in many different ways to conservation and conservation planning, things like that. Here's the most stunning photograph of interaction between a bearded vulture, a young bearded vulture, and a Cape vulture, taken by Johan Grobbelaar. And perhaps on your visit to Golden Gate, you'll be lucky, very lucky, to encounter something such as this. But in any event, if you haven't visited Golden Gate, or if you have, please do come and visit again, enjoy it, and have fun doing so. And I would just like to acknowledge a number of photographers who very kindly allowed me to use their photographs in this presentation. They're listed there, and thank you very much for joining me on this virtual trip to Golden Gate to see the scenic beauty of the place, and also some of the very, very special birds that occur there. Should anyone want to get in touch with me, I can be found on Facebook or Instagram. There's my email address. with regard to birding in the Golden Gate area or any other areas of the Free State, or in fact any other areas of South Africa. So I'd love to hear from you. And Andrew, thanks again very much for the invitation to present on this wonderful series. I'm truly honoured to have been a presenter on BirdLife South Africa's conservation conversations. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Rick. It really has been an honour for us to have you, and I know it's been quite a demand on you recently. We asked you to present at the Virtual African Bird Fair just a couple of days ago, and now we've got you back on Conservation Conversation. So thank you so much for that presentation. I think your passion really shone through. You clearly do love this area deeply. I know you visit it very, very often, and you're one of the foremost birding authorities. So we're very lucky to have access to people like yourself for these different SANParks destinations. I certainly learned a lot. I realized how much I've missed out on previous visits to the park. So I'm certainly inspired to get back there. I cannot wait, especially with spring rolling around and all of these grassland specials coming into their breeding plumage and looking at their best. So I certainly hope to get down there and hope to spend some time with you down there, perhaps very soon.
Fantastic. No, I look forward to that. And thank you. Yes, it's an absolute pleasure to just to be able to share some of the birds of this area and some of the knowledge that I've managed to acquire over many visits to the area.
Wonderful, Rick. Thank you so much. It really is a special place. So I'm going to encourage everyone, if you have questions for Rick, there is our Q&A box on Zoom. Otherwise, if you're watching us on Facebook, you can pose those in the comments section, and I'll keep an eye on that as well. There are quite a few questions already. I would like to encourage everyone, when you do log out of this webinar, you should be automatically sent to a post-webinar survey. There are a few questions on there from BirdLife's perspective, a few from Rick as well. If you'd like to find out what you think. So please do take just a minute or two to answer those, and it will be greatly appreciated. And next week, we have another webinar at Tuesday, 7 o'clock, same time, same place. So please do tune in for that. I believe it's Professor Arjun Amar from the Fitzpatrick Institute who's going to talk to us about the various ways that he's used the internet as a research application, using Google Images and other such tools to actually do scientific research. So it promises to be a fascinating presentation. Rick, we have probably 10 to 15 minutes for some questions. I'm going to rattle through a few of those. Perhaps picking up where you left off with the Honorary Rangers birding weekend, do you have any dates for when the next birding weekend in Golden Gate might be?
Andrew, yes, I see that there's a question on that. We don't have, I don't think the dates have been published yet. Obviously, with the whole COVID pandemic, we haven't been able to have the get-togethers that we've been used to. But they're generally, it's usually the first or second weekend of February. And as SANParks, as the Honorary Rangers do, they get the they get the ads out in fairly good time. So yeah, I think if those who are interested, just pencil out the first 2 weekends of February. I think it's usually the first weekend of February each year. So yeah, they haven't decided on dates for next year at this stage, but I think you'd be pretty safe if you looked at those 2 dates. And if anybody is particularly interested, they can get in touch with me, and I'll make sure that they receive the information should that become available.
Fantastic, Rick. There's a question here about are there any resident bird guides in Golden Gate? I'm going to just butt in here and say, apart from Rick, who obviously has a lot of knowledge about the area, we have 2 community bird guides in training at the moment. They are going to be training in Bokastrom and are hopefully graduating in early September. So we will have 2 of those community bird guides stationed there in Golden Gate National Park. They're actually current SANParks staff members. So thank you for SANParks working with us to get those guys trained up. So there will be 2 local guys as well who will be keeping tabs on the birds and who you can take out as well. And Rick, I assume you also do organized tours in Golden Gate.
Sure. Yeah. I'm more than happy to arrange to meet up with people in Golden Gate, should they require that. But it's great to hear that there's some of the Golden Gate staff who are in training. That's wonderful news. Thanks. I think that there are wonderful opportunities for them.
I absolutely agree. I'm very excited to have some guides in the Free State. There's a question here from Warren Funston, who is obviously keen on seeing the bearded vultures, and he wants to know whether there is any way of knowing ahead of time whether carcasses will be out at the vulture restaurant.
I think the easiest thing to do is just to inquire, at Golden Gate. They should be able to tell you. I will say that there isn't a sort of routine process, as far as I'm aware, of putting carcasses out on a regular basis. I think they're reliant very much on support from farmers in the area, and I know just through the honorary rangers that they've been disappointed at times to hear that people have gone up to the vulture restaurant and there's been nothing there. Usually when we have a birding weekend in February, it doesn't always happen, but they try and ensure that there are fresh carcasses, or at least a carcass put out, especially for the benefit of the people coming for that weekend.
Great, thanks, Rick. Yeah, my understanding was always that you could ring ahead to the Glenrennan campsite at that SANParks office and ask, and hopefully they have the most up-to-date information there. Someone also asked, Karen Wissler. Karen asked if you need to book the vulture hide in advance of your visit.
No, as far as I know, it's not necessary. I think that if the restaurant was actively provisioned, and there was a mad rush of people, if this was a regular thing, booking might become necessary. But as far as I know, you just go up and it's potluck in terms of but it's really underutilized. I mean, I've been there on numerous occasions, and very rarely have I I've never not been able to get in and sit there and spend some time there. There's always been space. So I think until such a time as it becomes well provisioned with carcasses and I just think that Golden Gate is perhaps not, it doesn't host the numbers of visitors who would fill the place at any one time. So I think it should be quite, you should have more than enough opportunity to go up and spend time there without having, coming to a door that's closed that won't allow you in.
Yeah, absolutely. That's been my experience. I think often I've had the hide all to myself, actually. And even if there isn't a carcass, I mean, there's always old bones and skeletons around. Seeing jackals is quite, it's almost guaranteed in that area. And even with a bit of patience, if there isn't a fresh carcass around, the bearded vultures and jackal buzzards and cape vultures do the rounds, and they come past the hide to check if anything else is there. So with a little bit of patience, even if there isn't a fresh carcass out there, I think you still have a good chance of stumbling upon those birds. Rick, would you agree with that?
Absolutely, yeah.
Good. Okay, Warren has another question about African rock pippets. This is a bird I saw for the first time ever on top of the mountain above Glenrennan on that popular hiking trail. And he would like to know whether they are visible at all on the tourist road loops, and when is the best time of year to see them?
Yes, Warren. Good to know you there, Warren. Haven't heard about you or heard from you in a very long time. So hi. Yeah, rock pipit. I think what you need to look for is the sort of exposed rocky areas, and so those are the some of the loops do have exposed rocky areas. I know the Oribi loop on the way up to the Vulture restaurant. Just as you get, approach when you pass the turnoff up to, to the log cabins, mountain retreat, and then before and after the turnoff to the parking area to the restaurant, you get that those little rocky outcrops, and I frequently get rock pipits up there. So where you can get fairly close to these exposed rocky areas, that's probably one of the best places to look out for them. And I mean, spring and summer is the best time because you need to listen out for them as well. I think most times rock pipits, you'll know which direction to look in because you hear them calling. They do perch openly out on the rocks, so I think that's another thing that you can, if you're on the lookout for them, you might see them, but listen out for them. And the best time to hear them calling is spring and summertime.
Great, thank you. And Debbie Powell would like to know the best time of year for bearded vultures.
Yeah, I haven't been there, in all months of the year at all, but I've seen them in midsummer. I've seen them in springtime. I've seen them in autumn as well. I don't think that I've stopped off to really look for them in the dead of winter. I have driven through there in winter, but yeah, you can see bearded vultures anytime, I should imagine, and generally you would need to have a day when the sun is shining, even if there are patchy clouds, because they need the rising thermals to be able to move around. They won't be flying when it's inclement weather. But I would say just be on the lookout at any time of the year. But yeah, I've seen them spring, summer, autumn. As I say, I can't recall seeing them in winter time.
Yeah, they aren't really.
They're resident in the area, so the chances are that they'll be moving around, within their extended home ranges. There's a pair that sometimes roosts. I've seen it through a scope from the car park in front of the Glenreenan camp. They roost on the basalt peak of the cliff on the opposite side of the valley. If you look up in a northerly direction, you really need a scope. Even strong binoculars, you might just make them out, but through a scope you'll see them. So that's another thing to do that's worth trying.
Okay, yeah, I mean, as you say, they are resident birds. They don't move out of the area during winter or anything like that. So I think you stand a pretty good chance all through the year. Warren, one last question from Warren, and then I'm going to indulge myself with one. Warren would like to know about Drakensberg siskin in the park. Do you have any tips or tricks for that one?
I don't personally. I've yet to see a Drakensberg siskin in Golden Gate, but I know a number of people who have seen Drakensberg siskin. So I think that they're probably not resident. They probably move through, and they probably occur at the highest altitudes that you can't really drive to, up in the high mountains up towards Lesotho. But during certain times, particularly during cold snaps, they might move to low altitudes, and that's when people are probably seeing them. But I'm afraid, Warren, I can't give you any pointers as to where to go and look for them. Perhaps just to say, when you're up at the highest altitudes, whether on in a car on one of the roads, or if you're hiking, when you're up in the highest altitudes, be on the lookout for them. That's probably your best chance.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing Drakensberg siskin Golden Gate. I've seen them in Lesotho, but not in Golden Gate itself.
Yeah, interesting. I've never picked them up there ever before. So yeah, good kudos to those who do have it on their park lists. One last question, because we are heading up what is 8:30 now indeed. So I've had this is just totally me indulging myself. I've had a little bit of a look at the SANParks data for Gurney's sugarbird, and I cannot see a single confirmed record for Gurney's sugarbird in Lesotho. And I checked this up with Alan Lee, who helped put together the Birds of Lesotho checklist, and he doesn't have a record for this as well. Can you think of any good reason why Gurney's sugarbird wouldn't have been recorded in Lesotho, given that it comes right up to the boundary, kind of all across that northeastern section of Lesotho?
Very good question, Andrew, and it's something I've never really thought about. I've spent quite a bit of time up in the Highlands of Lesotho. I don't think, well, I probably haven't been in areas where proteas are found. I've been in areas where, at times the red hot pokers are wall to wall all over. They're full of malachite sunbirds, but no Gurney sugarbirds. I can't answer your question. I think that there's there's probably quite a lot of hunting pressure on certain bird species from the locals. I've seen a lot of the youngsters who are out herding their livestock. They live off the land, and but I can't recall, in the areas that I've been, actually seeing stands of proteas or anything like that. Maybe they're particularly partial to proteas. I don't know. It's something that I'll definitely look into and see if I can. I'll speak to Davy de Swart, who's arguably the authority on Gurney sugarbird, and see if he's got any observations. Firstly, but he would have atlased them, I'm sure. So that's a very good question. Difficult one to answer, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I think maybe that's a fun way to end this, as a challenge for all of you out there. If you are birding in Lesotho, whether you're entering in from Golden Gate side or from elsewhere, there's an opportunity to add a bird to a country's list by spotting the first ever Gurney sugarbird. So if you do, let me know, let Alan Lee know, our Science and Innovation Program Manager, and we'll make sure that it's popped onto the next revision of the Lesotho bird list. But yeah, that's for another day. Rick, thank you so much for joining us tonight. It was a wonderful presentation. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and your passion. And I hope to see you and bird with you in the Free State very soon.
Great, Andrew. Thanks very much, and thanks to everybody for being here this evening and supporting this presentation. I haven't had a chance to go through all the comments in the chat, but thank you for it's wonderful to get the wonderful feedback from the presentation. So lovely to have spent this time on conservation conversations, and thanks so much again, Andrew.